Thanks so much, guys, for joining us for today's session in real time, Make Stunning Visuals Effortlessly with KeyShot. My name is Diana Dietrich. I'm a marketing specialist here at Swoosh Technologies, and I will be your host for today. Just a little on Swoosh. We're partnered with Siemens PLM, CamWorks, and KeyShot, and our award-winning PLM solution team is dedicated in providing you the best software solutions and technical support necessary to help you utilize best practices and solutions in your industry that benefit your workflow. Also, our team is focused on bringing you process-based training. Our instructors tailor the way they teach to really work with your production workflow. Presenting today is application engineer Dylan Malek. For nearly 2 decades, Dylan has seen the growth and changes and challenges many designers and manufacturers face in a variety of industries. He's knowledgeable in sheet metal fabrication, structural design, surfacing, rendering, and animation, and is a certified CAD professional as well as one of our most sought-after training instructors. His great working knowledge of best practices in CAD and his experiences in a variety of industries can help your team better deliver your products. Today, we're talking KeyShot. The best thing about KeyShot is that no matter what your 3D file format is, you can create the most stunning images and animations out there. KeyShot's ability to create the highest quality visuals ensures that you're using the best software out there for all your visualization needs. Dylan will be highlighting his favorite features, including interior mode lighting, real-time region render, material graphs, and material map labels. And he'll show you how it's helped him impress his team and clients over and over again. If you have any questions, please feel free to add these into the questions box located in your GoToWebinar panel. Dylan will have your questions answered during the Q&A portion taking place right after the presentation. All right, Dylan, take it away.
All right, thank you, Diana. All right, folks, let me switch over to KeyShot here. All right, so I'm going to show you some of the new stuff that just came out in KeyShot 6, and as I'm doing it, I'm going to be demonstrating some of the current technology and how it actually works for those new to KeyShot. So I'm going to go ahead and import some geometry here. Let's take a look at some of the options here. We have your typical CAD system, SolidWorks, Edge, Pro E, Inventor. I'll bring those directly in assemblies and the parts. And of course, some of the other nerd-based modelers like OBJs and STLs and IGES or excuse me, some of these files down here. So what we're going to do is grab an assembly. Let's go ahead and import that. Nothing too dramatic here that's changed. One thing that has been omitted is scaling geometry on import. Now KeyShot respects the geometry that was in the CAD or other design system. So whether it was millimeters or inches, it'll import such in the same style. Some other things, one other thing that may have changed or has changed here is the object. So materials, if your part had color on it and there was multiple parts in that assembly that had the same color, if you imported that into KeyShot, if you change one of those colors, they're typically all linked together and they all change. Now you can actually go in and say separate materials by parts, by material parts, or by object. Objects is the default, so all parts come in the same color, will be maintained in the same color unless you tell it to do so differently. And of course, just the tessellation slider bar where you can adjust. Also, like as I mentioned, the important NURB geometry, where it's not a bunch of just tessellated triangles. It actually is a smooth curves and smooth faces. All right, so let me go ahead and import that in. So once we're in, the first thing I typically want to do is see where the part is actually located in space. I can tell right away my part is the shadow is kind of in the mid part. How I can really tell is if I come over to the camera tab and turn on the ground grid. That gives me a better perspective view of where my actual part is in space, and I can tell it's not on the ground where I want it. So I'm just going to come over here and position that, snap that up to the ground. So now my shadow is actually underneath the part. Don't need the ground grid. You can leave it on if needed. As you notice, it's kind of grainy as I move around, and as I kind of stop, it starts getting refined image. So KeyShot is a real-time renderer. So I can go ahead and pause real quick. What it's doing, and every time I move, the shadow gets regenerated and the texture surfaces get regenerated. So it's constantly doing that. If you ever want to pause, you can do that. I just use the Shift key to actually do that command. If you want to see what the shortcut keys are, if you hit K on the keyboard, it'll bring up a list of all your shortcut keys right here. So it's a good little list to have handy, and obviously a few of those will be memorized very shortly. A few other options to help performance-wise is the ability to put yourself in performance mode. So as you can see, it's kind of graying. As hit performance mode, it immediately drops the shadows, and the surface finish kind of gets very smooth. So what that's doing is it's increasing your performance, so you don't actually see all the stuff going on constantly. When you're ready to go, you can just go back into regular mode, and you're good to go. All right, so let's start adding some colors onto this. So this is nothing new. We're going to go through and add some paint to this. I'm just going to drop on there. I'm just going to copy that material and put it on a couple of different places. And let me do some metal here. I'll go down to steel. And let me do some scratch steel on here. A little big texture. I'm going to go over to textures real quick and just go ahead and bump that down. Let's go to 5. That should work. Let's see. Go to my favorites. So we have a favorite tab here, and where you can save some of your commonly used textures that you'd use all the time. I'm going to use asphalt on the grinder disc, and again, I'm going to bump that texture down quite a bit. That'll work. All right, so some of these materials you notice, I'm going to add a particular material to this. Let me look at this part. First thing I want to do is actually turn off a part up here. So this is new to KeyShot 6, the ability to lock geometry. For example, this lamp, if I just hid that, then I went back and said show all geometry, this lamp would keep popping on and off. So what I want to do is say hide and lock. So that turns it off with a little lock next to it, as you can notice. Also, let's do a little more something a little easier to see. So I'm going to say lock selection, or I just want to come over again and say unlock or hide and lock at the same time. So you can hide. So it goes away. So what that allows you to do is if I go through and pick and say, you know, hide, hide model, turns everything off. Now if I say show all parts, well, everything except what I lost does not show up again. So that's new. So you don't have to keep constantly going back off and switching these off and on. But we want to go ahead and unlock this one and switch it on. So let's go ahead and take some focus on that. Let's look at that model here. And show only. All right, so what we're going to do here is I want to apply a texture. I have the Moltec geometry here. It's not the one that I actually want is in this list. I think I have one of my favorites. If not, I can always go to KeyShot Cloud Library. So this again is if you're signed up with KeyShot. For example, there's a myriad of different textures and colors in your KeyShot, but there's just hundreds, if not thousands, of different ones online that you can actually go and grab. Same thing with background environments. So the environments, these are the HDRIs, the high dynamic range images. They're kind of a 3D environment that you can rotate and position your geometry in, and will rotate the environment around your geometry. Of course, a whole new set of different backdrops that you can use. These are just 2D background to use, and of course some wrapped textures you can see down through here. So for example, if I want to get the specific mold tech, you can come over here and just immediately just click it and brings over here. If you like it, you can just go ahead and download it. I'm just going to use one of the ones I already have. So I'm just going to switch back over, and let me just grab this one. All right, so I have some texture on there, so let me go ahead and do some modifications to this first. Let me make that a little smaller. That'll work. So I have a nice rough texture on the top, so if I'm using my thumb to turn this off and on, it has a nice smooth rough finish to grab onto. I don't necessarily want the sides, so in typical form, KeyShot, so this is one model. So if I go and grab another piece, let's say I want to make some black, shiny black plastic, and drag it on there. Of course, it's going to observe the entire geometry because that was one unitized color first. So what's new about this is we have the ability now to go in and edit geometry inside of KeyShot. So some things you can do is if you have some mesh problems, you can close some mesh areas up and or edit inverted normals. But in this situation, we just want to go ahead and split an object. And what I want to do is turn the side different from the top texture. So I'm going to say next. Then I just use this window over here. And you can see these windows kind of behave in the same orientation no matter what I grab. So what I want to do is grab some of these faces. And I have a couple different ways. I can do it by splitting angle or polygons. If I go polygons, you notice it puts a lot of little triangles, which I could go through and start picking. But for example, if I wanted something on the top, it would take forever. So in this scenario, I was going to go splitting angle. And I'm going to go through and grab a face and that face, but you notice it's starting to pick up that top area. Well, what I'm going to do is start dumping the angle down here, and as I do that, it's going to stop picking some of these faces. So I'm going to now go through and grab the faces that I want. There we go. Oops. Do that one more time. The mouse is acting. Hang on a second. Plug my mouse in. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to just grab a couple of these faces. Sorry about that. And say split object. All right, so now what I have is two individual surfaces. So there's one surface and there's the other surface. So I can just go ahead and say I'm done. And let's go ahead and minimize this back down and close it out. Now when I go ahead and say I want to do the shiny paint on the side, so it behaves as expected. It only grabs the faces that I wanted to actually have the color. So that's new to KeyShot 6. Let me show all the parts again. All right, something also new, but not necessarily brand new, but something that was added to. All right, so what I want to do is this is a smooth paint. So what I want to do is add some a crackle kind of finish. So I can just double click that, and what I can do is go into this part and actually go and say I want to add a bump map to it. And what we have here is some new, these are what they refer to as procedural textures, which are mathematically driven as opposed to just a 2D texture, which you would see over here in the list on the left. Those are just 2D images. So this, I'm going to add some noise to it, and when I do that, you notice it kind of gives me a crackle finish on it now, which is kind of what I was looking for. All right, so that's a little bit new, just some new options here. Something that is new is something we can actually now do with labels. So let me position this so I can do that with. And in doing so, you know, we have perspective mode, which is what you typically would work in KeyShot, where everything is a 3-point vanishing point. So your vertical lines and horizontal lines all have a vanishing point. Of course, CAD uses orthographic, where everything's parallel infinitely off in his face. Not very pretty looking, but for CAD, that's your typical view. But we now actually have what they call a shift mode. For those doing architectural, like cityscapes or houses, what this does is if I say hit the estimate vertical shift, and what it does is now I only have 2 vanishing points. So the horizontal lines have vanishing point this direction and this direction, but all my vertical lines are now actually vertical up and down the screen. So they don't actually have a vanishing point, they just go off in the space parallel. So that's new to this version. But what we needed was orthographic view, and I needed to put a label on it. So I'm going to go and position myself to the right side view. Let me go over and grab a texture. So again, these are just the 2D textures. So I want to grab, I'm going to go ahead and use this one and position it right there as a label. Let's go ahead and change the projection. I just want to go I want to project in the x-axis, but I definitely need to scale that down. Let's go 0.5, maybe 0.375. There we go. And go ahead and position it again and just drag it around. And then I'll have it on this side and the other side, so I'll leave it like it is. That looks good there. All right, so let's take a look at that. All right, so in previous versions of KeyShot, when you drag a label on an object, it typically places it like a sticker. So it's just a shiny sticker sticking over part. What we can do now is actually go into that texture of the label, and we can come down and say, you know what, we want to add. What we're going to add is the background. You notice the background has the bump. What we're going to do is say, you know what, take that background texture and adopt it to my sticker. All right, so now the sticker itself or label would adopt to maybe like a screen printed image. So let's take a look at something new also. At the same time, we can actually do a render region. So let me, so you can actually increase performance. You can go ahead and zoom up on an object. So now you can see really fast that the actual label is adopting this actual texture. All right, let's go back to full screen here. So that's new to KeyShot 6. Something else we can do with labels in KeyShot 6, and this is a new function that lets you do a lot of cool stuff. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of it. What I want to do is go to material graphs. So this brings up another window that allows you to do a couple different things. This is a customizable material properties. So you kind of reach from left to right and to basically start with your texture mapping and then the actual physical properties and mathematical properties than the actual color. But what we want to do is you can add different types of things, textures, materials. There's actually in KeyShot 6 an animation, a color fade. If you wanted to have colors animate on your geometry. In this scenario, we're actually going to do a color adjustment. Let me zoom out a little bit here, make some room. What I'm going to do is actually go and say I want on that to come over and now connect that to there. Position that so you can see a little bit better. All right, so what we're going to do is, let me move this over because we're going to adjust the color of this label. So if I go to color adjust, let's make it green. So now I can come over and adjust that little 2D image and adjust that. That looks kind of where I want. You know, if you really want to get really fun with it, you can stack textures. So I can add a texture to a texture. For example, I come over here and say, let's add camouflage on top of it. So I can actually make that a camouflage KeyShot logo. And there's some things you can do with it to bring, so you can say color balance. Do you want the logo to shine more through, or do you want the actual camouflage to shine through? Or you can just kind of mix the colors on a median. So that's new to KeyShot 6. All right. Zoom back out here. All right, something else I was going to show you on the material graph. If I go to this part here, the material graph, right now it doesn't have any texture to it, but I can come over to my materials. Let's go under aluminum, find a texture aluminum. This guy right here. I don't want the color, but I just want to actually go to add that bump map to it. So immediately, just by dragging that in and connecting it to that. So if I go right back to that, it goes away. Just by dragging it over, boom, it pops in there. If you want to leave this one, you can actually delete it. You know, you can do some manipulation in here, or once you have it done, you can just kind of do the manipulation on the geometry itself. For example, if I want to change the look of this, instead of being a grid style, I want to go to more of a cylindrical mesh style. And if I want to bump it down maybe a little bit, and maybe knock down the bump height. That looks pretty good there. So that's a really fast and easy way. Again, that's material graphs. You can do an infinite amount of customization with materials through the material graph. Stack as many as you like. All right. One of the last things we're going to show you, we actually have a new environment. It's actually specifically set up for interior lighting. All right. So how this works is performance mode. Again, we lose all our shadows and stuff. I go over to basic. which is the default operation for KeyShot. So there's a few more lights and some other shadows being generated. Products, again, it adds a few more ray bounces and makes plastics look better and translucence look better, just adding more to it. And of course, the new one is the interior mode. So this is has interior algorithms for specifically for interior environments. So I don't have a real good example using this, but as soon as I go, if I go from basic to interior, you can actually see it is quite drastically different. And of course, custom modes as well. This allows you to, if you do specific types of lighting, you can actually go in and say, I want to set up my own light sources. If I go to jewelry, it's going to be really bright. So if you just go interior mode, let's go over to let's go back, turn on my lamp. So let me unlock that, turn that on, let me duplicate it. I'm going to add a couple different types of lights. I'm going to take one. All right, let's move that. In doing so, let's take a look at the position tool. It's not necessarily new, but they have refined it. And if you notice, we actually, for those that have seen KeyShot before, it used to have all this on at one time. Now you can actually turn off individual items out here. So if you just want to be able to translate an object and drag it without inadvertently picking the rotate, yeah, you can do that now. So let me just go ahead and move this up a little bit. That'll work. Go ahead and position that. And another, just a quick example, let's take a look at that again. So I'm going to grab this switch, and if I go to position and move tool, I'm going to turn on again the rotate, and you notice the pivot point is set by self, and that's the default that you've always got. But you can always say, I want to pick my rotate point, and I can actually say I want to rotate about picking it from the window here. And what I actually did is actually pick the geometry of this, and it puts it on center. So I say OK, zoom out. So now you notice where the rotate point is based around this guy, so I can actually use it to rotate my geometry around. In that scenario, maybe for doors or things that need to move on a hinge, you can set a particular rotate point that's not dependent upon the orientation of the geometry when it comes in. I don't need to move that, so I'm just going to go ahead and shut that down. So that's some of the new move options that we have. Let's go ahead and apply some lights to this. So lights are materials. So let me get over to my lights. All right. Some of the new things, some of these are just left over from previous versions, like the missile type lights. But some of the new stuff we have are aerial lights and particular and specific cone angle and or lumen and or whether or the excuse me, the type, whether it's warm or a cold type light. So I'm going to go ahead and do a light on that. So that's just a general ambient light. So I'm going to go in and do grab that one. Actually, got it. There we go. And the next one, I'm going to just use one of these. I'm going to drop it on there. All right, so let's adjust my environment here. I'm going to turn the brightness down, so I don't look like I got the there we go. Now I have a little bit of light, but what I want to do is the angle of this is the wrong direction. So again, I'm going to go back to my scene, find which one I want to use. So that's that lamp right there. So what I'm going to do is position this lamp so it's actually pointed at the label. So I'm going to do the move tool, and I'm going to go ahead and rotate this in this orientation. You can see the light immediately start shining on the geometry. So let's go right about there. I'm going to rotate a little bit this. I'm going to actually translate it down. There we go. Slide that down. Lights more on the label. And there we have it. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that. that again. So again, in the lighting environment, that's the interior. It does. It's not a good example. Let me go back to the PowerPoint here. So this is a couple examples from KeyShot of interior lighting modes with some nice little setups here. So that's pretty much is it for what I had to show. Is there the questions or next? Anybody have any questions, Diana?
We actually have several questions in our queue today, so I'm going to try to make sure that we get them all answered. If your question is not answered today, just know that I'm going to send them all over to Dylan. And please, if you do have any questions, like, as of right now and all that stuff, please feel free to add these in there. They're all private, so no one will know that you're asking or anything. So Dylan, the first question that we have in our queue is, what type of exports does KeyShot output?
Yeah, you can save it as a bit file, or good deal. You can export to OPJs, STLs, so you can save back out of KeyShot. So those are the export options here.
Okay. Another question that we have in our queue is, I heard KeyShot can be integrated with other programs. Can KeyShot be integrated with all CAD software or just a select few?
So if you go to the KeyShot plugin page, you can actually go, and these are the softwares, Creo, which is ProE, Engineer, PPC, SolidWorks. If you're a Solid Edge user, you already have KeyShot built into it, but it's not the Pro version. You get a basic version, but you can add on a Pro version if you wanted to your version of Solid Edge. But these are the plugins that allow you to do the live linking. So the geometry is tied together. So if you update the CAD, you don't have to recreate your renders. It'll just basically update the renders in KeyShot from previous assigned colors and textures.
So another question that we have is, what is the system requirement for KeyShot, and would special hardware or graphic cards be required to use it?
KeyShot actually is a CPU-based system, so you can actually set to how many cores. So I have a 8-core quad-core processor. So right now I had it set to 50%, so I can actually do other things in the background with my CAD systems. So it doesn't use a video card, so your CAD can be using video while this is actually using the CPU. So the more cores on the processor, the better off you'll be using KeyShot.
We have a question about the KeyShot Cloud, actually. So does the KeyShot Cloud come pre-populated? Are there any additional costs in having a cloud? And what if I already have a cloud-based service from, like, say, Amazon Web Services? Could I use that instead?
Well, you could, but that would be probably more. These are more proprietary to KeyShot, and there's a vetting process when people upload them, so they can go through and test on them, make sure they're accurate and they work right. Obviously, if you have your own 2D textures, these are just a small example of what you can find out on the internet. There's a tons of wrapped style textures that you could use. It's just very simple to use. You can just drag and drop them on the KeyShot, and it becomes a usable texture at that moment. There's no cost to it. As long as you have a KeyShot license, you have access to this. All you have to do is create a sign-in login, and off you go. And you can download any of these any time you want, and in your KeyShot from there on out.
Then we have time for one final question, guys. So Dylan, our final question is, in adding textures to my object, can I add custom-made texturized pics I made to my object?
Say that one more time.
In adding textures to my object, can I add custom-made texturized pics I made by myself to my object?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a JPEG, bitmap, TIFF image. As long as it's high enough resolution, DPI-wise, so you don't see any graininess, absolutely. So if you want to create your own labels for your objects with, like the packaging stickers. Absolutely, people do that all the time.
Thanks so much, Dylan. So unfortunately, guys, we are out of time for the day, but we want to be sure that if you do have any questions that come up after the presentation or the next few days, that you can get a hold of us. If you have any questions about KeyShot, or if you'd like to set up a demo or maybe a free trial, please feel free to reach out to me or Dylan by phone or by email. Or if you're already working with a Swish representative here, please feel free to reach out to them as well. Either way, we're all here and we're more than happy to help in any way we can. And also, for the questions that didn't get answered, I will let you know that I will send them over to Dylan, so he or one of our Swish representatives should be getting back to you shortly in the next few days. Once again, guys, thanks so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the session. Also, please be on the lookout for the webinar replay email that's going to be hitting your boxes in 1 or 2 days. So just be on the lookout for that. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Dylan. Bye.